and welcome back to the Overwater podcast. We're mixed up, look sharp in it today, as it's finally time to interview the man that usually gives the interviews, Dan Ezard. Dan's a super pro player with a deep understanding and insight into all things bass. His main gigs are playing bass for Gabrielle and Boyzlife, but he's also worked with many other artists, including Sophie Ellis-Bextor, Dermot Kennedy, Michael Ball, Il Divo, and Chris de Burgh. We're going to talk about his Overwater Basses, his work with Overwater, how his career has panned out since studying at Leeds, stepping on the Bat Out of Hell musical, gig prep, touring, education, and a whole lot more. Dan's been a mate of mine for 20 years now. It's been awesome to see where his music journey has taken him, and it's an honour to interview him today. Let's get straight into it.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
All good, all good. Thank you for doing this. Welcome to your podcast.
Yeah, I think it's thank you for doing this, actually. But yeah,
No
it's
worries.
nice to catch up again.
I think it's been a year that we've been trying to sit down and do this, which is pretty mad. So I'm glad we're finally here.
Well, that's been entirely my fault as well. That's just my parenting and work madness. Like every time you've been suggesting them more often than I have, and every time we've nearly done one, I'm like, oh, I can't. I've got to do this, do that. So no, thank you for sticking with it.
Good, man. So you've had a busy and varied year so far. What have you been up to?
Yeah, it's been pretty full on, really. You know, all of this is kind of like asterisked against the fact that I've got 2 little boys and a lovely partner. Everything's kind of balanced these days against the family life. But I started the year, I had some bits and bobs in January, and then we were straight into rehearsals start of February for the Boyzlife tour, which was 6 weeks around the UK and Ireland, 6 or 7 weeks, which is Brian McFadden and Keith Duffy. So half Westlife tunes, half Boyzone tunes, sorry. So it's a really interesting set because you're basically doing an hour and a half of only number one singles, which is crazy. Like there's not really many acts in the world that can do that. So it's
banger
just
after banger.
Yeah, and it's great, and like the audiences are like so good for those things. Played some really nice venues that I'd not done before. Actually, we did Usher Hall in Edinburgh, which was a new one for me, and some other places, and just really fun, just wild. It's quite old school with those boys. It's kind of like gigs used to be. It's kind of 6 weeks out with the lads, and it's very good fun. I'm
guessing not old school in the sense of like, is it all? Are you on ears? It's not like wedges and stuff.
No. It's. I mean, they want amps. They like that kind of volume, that weight to the stage. I brought out my bass amp for the first time in many years, so that was fun having a bass amp on stage again, and just like even just like in sound check when you just like before everyone gets there, you can have a proper play and a fiddle around. You don't have to like ask the monitor guy to turn you up and give you the pack and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
nice.
I miss the amp side of things. Occasionally I have the same thing, and it's a treat to use it again and to feel that power behind you. And also the in-ears thing, obviously it's amazing that we all can hear every little detail, but it does take away a bit of the performance and the linking with other people on stage interacting. But it's got to be done. It is so much better for us hearing what we and everyone else are doing.
Absolutely. I think when you listen back to it, you can hear that people can really, you can really hear the detail when you're playing. But I just did a gig in Greece last week with our mutual friend Tom Marlowe, actually. But that gig in Greece was on wedges. I was playing a horrific rented double bass, as they often are in particularly hot countries. It's not a great environment for double basses. So
super high action, hasn't been used in 5 years. All that.
It was ridiculous. Anything kind of beyond the neck heel, which is basically the 7th fret for electric players, was just like, that far off the fingerboard. And there's no way. So everything was just like half position, first position. I'm not really going any further than that. But that was on wedges, and it was just lovely. It was lovely to hear. It was a chill kind of backgroundy kind of gig anyway. And it was just lovely to hear the air around you and the music, and for all of the bass is horrible and the sound guy wasn't great and blah blah blah. As soon as we started playing, it's like, this is really lovely. And then you're watching the sunset out over the Ionian Sea or whatever it is, and it was very beautiful.
Stunning.
So it was nice to get back to wedges for that.
When I saw you were doing, I think you said you just managed to make it work perfectly, that you went straight from that into, was it Gabrielle?
Yeah, so fortunately, I've known the Gabrielle lot for a long time now. So when we were talking about rehearsals for the year and for the tour, they squeezed them in. I had 3 days off from Boyzlife in the middle of the tour, so I think it was somewhere ridiculous as well. Like we'd been in like up in Scotland, and then I did a gig sort of Newcastle sort of way, and then the next morning had to be in South London for a 10 a.m. rehearsal. So got up at silly o'clock, drove from Newcastle to London. Yeah, but they fitted the 3 days rehearsals we had with Gab into my 3 days off. So finished the last day, drove up to Birmingham, jumped on the tour bus, and then we were back out again. So that was great because it was really, I came off the Boyzlife tour. I think I was home for 2 days, and then we were straight out up to the Hydro Arena in Glasgow with Gabrielle because she was opening for Rick Astley for 3.5 weeks doing his arena tour, which was brilliant. You know, like, yeah, full O2 Arena, Co-op in Manchester, Dublin, all the, you know, all the really big rooms in the country. So that was great. And just, yeah, so that was the start of the year. It was just really full on. And, you know, that's run into festival season and all the kind of the corporates and residencies and all the other bits and bobs that we all do. So yeah, it's been a crazy year, but it's been really good fun.
Yeah. Had it not worked out like that, how does it work with the depping? I mean, I know Hugh Richardson's done some for you, hasn't he? Do you need to run that by the MD and fixer? Is it, or do they want to have known the person before? How does all that work?
It's a little bit, it's trickier in kind of pop world than it is with kind of theatres or with corporate, because it's a little bit less of a less of a known thing. If you're on a pop gig, there's this kind of unspoken expectance that you're gonna be there all the time. So it's always a little bit tricky. I was lucky the way that worked out that I didn't have to, although when I was out with Boyzlife, Gabrielle had a few corporates and privates. So we had a young guy called Ty covering for me, who's been absolutely brilliant. Although he's getting super busy now, he's very, very good. So he's starting to pick up more and more big work. And so we've been lucky to have Ty around, and I think he's covering me for again in the autumn when I go back out with Boyzlife. It always feels, particularly to the artist, kind of, it feels a little bit more personal. It's like their band, they want to see the familiar faces. So if you can do it where you only have one depth, and so that when you're not there, it's someone they know, someone they trust, someone they can get along with, then that helps. And Hugh's been brilliant for me this summer. Hugh's done more festivals with the boys than I have this summer. So that's been great just to have. I've known Hugh forever. I used to cover the Bat Out of Hell musical for Hugh. So it's nice to return the favour actually and give him a bunch of stuff and get him on some of they just did Ascot races last weekend. And I saw some pictures and it's great, just an enormous crowd and it's lovely to see them out, and I know Hugh's smashing it. So yeah, you need to check it with the MD. You don't check it with the artist as such, but check it with MD, let management know. So management will then bridge the gap if they feel they need to tell the artist, oh, we've got so-and-so on bass today. Then they can let them know. But yeah, I run it past the MD but it always makes your case easier if you can say, everything I'm not doing this summer, this guy's going to do. You're not going to have a different bass player every week. That's where you run into trouble. If you keep changing it and keep changing it, then it's difficult.
You sort it out all in advance and they're happy. You're not messing them around. It's not last minute stuff.
Exactly. It's always a fine line to tread. There's a certain element where of like, if I could have done, I'd love to have done some more shows with them this summer. But it just so happened that everything that came in with them clashed with stuff that I already had in with Gabrielle. So it's never a money thing for me with those kinds of gigs. It's just a case of kind of prioritizing, you know, who booked you first and kind of, you know, making sure that you're kind of doing the right thing by people. And like I said, I'd already missed some Gab shows at the start of the year. So
who can I piss off the least?
Yeah, it's a little bit of balance because the last thing you want to do. I mean, it'd be great for Hugh, but I don't want Hugh doing the tour in the autumn. It'd be nice to jump back on that then. You've got to be a bit cute with it. You can't take too much off, but obviously you've got to make a living and everybody's freelance these days. There aren't that many guys and girls on retainers on gigs like that. So you've got to make it work.
With the Bat Out of Hell stuff then, so you covered Hugh in the West End and on the UK tour, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
And have you done any international dates on it? Because did they go to the States in the end? They did something else, I think.
They went to Canada.
Okay.
I can never remember if that was I don't think that was the full UK band. I think they just took the MD in like Keys 1 or something.
Yeah.
But I know they did an arena tour in Australia, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It was for a fairly new musical.
Yeah.
To then go out and tour arenas in Australia was wild. I didn't do any of the international stuff. That was all Hugh. I picked up on it. It opened in Manchester at the Opera House, I think, whenever it was, 6 or 7 years ago. And then when it moved to London, it went to the Coliseum. So I started depping on it then. And that was the first West End gig I'd done. So it was a really great. I can remember, obviously, and you know this much better than I, the amount of prep and then going in for the first time. And with that, I was quite lucky because everything is pretty much, apart from a couple of numbers, everything is on click. But even the click, I heard the count-in and I'm almost scared to play the first note. Like just the kind of the tension in the West End was kind of unlike anything else I'd really experienced. But it's so great when you do it and you get a completely clean show and everybody's happy. And then I remember Caroline came and we went to the pub afterwards, and then we went to Sheiky's, which is a restaurant in the West End, and I remember having a fish pie and a glass of white wine and just be like, all the tension sinking away.
I've got through it. Yeah, exactly.
Made it.
I know, man. Is that however much you prep for it, however many times you do it, that first moment and that first note, like you say, you can't quite believe you're sitting there doing it after all that prep.
Yeah.
And then, it again, it's the ears, the in-ears, you're under a microscope. Everyone's got their mixes. They've got everything exactly where they want. And not to scare you more about it, but if I'm on something, when someone new comes in, you're like, oh, turn them up, see what they're up to. Because it's like, it's like, oh, this is great. Someone new's coming in and everyone plays things slightly differently. And it's interesting for you. If you've done 8 shows that week and the week before and whatever, it's like, oh, there's a new deft in. It's fun, isn't it? But yeah, that pressure and stress never goes from doing it. And it is, but it's worth it, isn't it? That feeling afterwards, you're like, oh, done it. And then you can enjoy the next ones when you go back in and get more into it.
It is, yeah. And that gig sort of has steadily over the years become one of the kind of, the great gigs on my list of things that I'm really pleased I've done over the years. That gig has become one of those things. I ended up doing it at the Coliseum and then at the Dominion when it moved there in the West End. And then I've covered on a couple of the tours of it. And last year did a full kind of 4.5 weeks of the tour, which was really interesting to get a taste of that kind of touring. Most, all the touring I do is kind of in pop world and rock and roll pop kind of stuff. So doing a musical theatre tour was really interesting. It's very different. I loved being, in my digs until 7 p.m. and then strolling over the road. Like the bass in go and you're done again by 10. It's like, once you're up and running with those things, it's almost the opposite of when you start. There's a pressure to execute still, but it so well, and it's the same. It's going to be the same as it was the night before. There's almost an element of like you clock in and clock off, and then you've got all this other time to whatever you want to do, learn a language, start a new business, do a side hustle. If I was doing a long stint, I definitely have to have a whole separate project just to feel like I was, or just, go to the gym for 5 hours a day and get super shredded. Like there's a lot of time. I really enjoyed having that time, that space, just to kind of think and enjoy the experience of it.
Amazing. Let's go back to the start. So how did you get into playing, and why did you pick the coolest instrument in the world?
There it is. So I guess it's, it's kind of the cliched story of like, we were in school, I was 15 and I had a friend who played guitar and a friend he was actually a piano player, lives in America now and teaches music, but he also played drums. So we were hanging out together and I was, picking up the guitar and, if I played bass, we could start a band and hopefully, get some girls to notice us or whatever. So it was just that really. And then we started off playing like Oasis covers, Manic Street Preachers, Skunk Anansie, bands like that. And we quickly kind of organised a gig in the local village hall. It was for the Sanford Cheese Club, actually, as it happens. A good Devon gig. And everyone that could in school came. So we played to like 300 people on our first gig. And, there were scraps and we couldn't get out because a bunch of kids wanted to fight someone in the band. And it was completely bonkers. It was completely out of control, but it was great. And it was like the talk of the school for like weeks after. And it
Oh.
was it was cool, man. It just kind of, and that just kind of lit the fire, I guess. There is a kind of a before that gig and after that gig kind of phases of my life,
Oh.
and it really opened my eyes to kind of like, oh, this could be really fun. Not the fighting bit. I actually dropped out of my A levels in the end and went to the local college and did a BTEC in jazz for 2 years, and then that led to me going to Leeds to study with Zoltan and do my Bachelor of Music there.
You
Which is
couldn't have
where
gone
our
much
paths
further from
begin to
Devon.
cross. Well, I mean, that's funny. I think that was quite intentional. My
Yeah.
brother went to university in St Andrews, so he really went
Wow.
up there. So he went all the way to Scotland, but there was an element where, I don't know, it just felt right to kind of get away. There probably was a decent course in Bristol or something, but my options only ever were London, Leeds, or Newcastle. They're the only ones I remember looking at. And yeah, it was great. Leeds is a great city. I've often thought, in hindsight, if I was going to do it again, I would have studied in London, just to make the transition from student to kind of working player a bit easier, because basically I finished my 4 years in Leeds, went home to Devon for 6 months, and then moved up to London. And there's an element where you're starting your networking all over again. You have to meet people. You have to work out where the jam nights are and where the gigs are, where the hangs are. I think the guys that study in London, obviously it comes part and parcel. Whilst you're on your course, you're already picking up gigs. You're already getting to know people you're studying with, but also people in the wider community. So I just think that, you're opening the doors at the same time as studying. Whereas I always felt like with Leeds, it was like I did the studying and then I had to open the doors afterwards when I moved to London.
But did you consider basing yourself in Leeds or somewhere else in the north? Because I did. I was thinking about I loved it in Leeds and I was going to stay and then kind of do the work to Manchester, Liverpool, and the places that we end up driving much further. If you go from South London to North London, it can take you 2 hours. And either of us could have stayed, and lots of our friends did, didn't they? But did you consider that then?
I didn't actually. It never really occurred to me. I was going back and forth for a while because our bass teacher, Zoltan, had hooked me up with this Frank Sinatra tribute, and they also were the backing band for Shirley Bassey tribute. So I was, that first year after uni, I was going back up quite a lot to go and play for these tribute artists, and a lot of their gigs were up north. So I guess there was an element of it, but it's funny thinking back on it because it never occurred to me, but I'm not sure it really occurred to me that I was moving to London either when I finished. I don't know if it's me personally or it was the time, because it was still like, the dawning days of the internet, but I was quite kind of loose with my plans. I was just like, I've finished that now. There was no kind of master plan of like, this is how I now go and dominate bass world. It was just like, right, finish that. I guess I'll go home for a bit. And then some friends had moved to London already, not musicians, just friends from Devon.
Yeah.
And they had a room in their house. So I went for that. Yeah. And that was then how I started kind of my London journey. But there was no intentional, like, this is the best place for me to make a living or whatever. It just kind of worked out that way. And I think definitely for the best.
When you first got to London, then how long did it take to build things up? And did you have like a part-time side job? Did you pick up some teaching? How did it get going?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question and a really important thing for everyone to understand, particularly people who are kind of in that kind of university phase or studying and looking to kind of start to build up some kind of a career. It took me, I would say at least 10 years. And by that, I had a gig as soon as I moved to London. We had a residency playing in a club called Tiger on Haymarket, right in the middle of the West End there. So we played there every Thursday. So I already had like a regular gig, but one gig isn't really enough to sustain you in London. So we were trying to build other things, and I had some other, like a big kind of 70s band that I was depping for as well. But I had some kind of a part-time job from when I moved to London at 21, certainly until 30. I was quite fortunate that through a temping agency, I ended up working for this asset management company in the city, who then took me on privately. And I could, it was very flexible. I could do whatever hours I wanted in the week and just bill them for the hours. So that made it easier. It wasn't like I had to commit to, shifts at Starbucks or something. I think I did about 15 hours a week. So I could make up the hours kind of whenever I was available. But because of that, I did that for a long time, and arguably that took a little bit of impetus away from being out and hustling for gigs as hard as I possibly could. Because I think for a while I just kind of sat with the gigs I had and did the work, paid the bills, and then it was only until after a couple of years I started getting out, going to more of the jams and going to more gigs. And the nights we both used to go to, Ruby Sings at Ronnie Scott's, and the Hoxton Jam, which is actually where I met Hugh Richardson. It was actually it was at a different place to Troy Bar. We used to go to Troy Bar as well, but there was the Hoxton Jam, and I can't remember what it was called now, just off of Old Street. And I used to go to that one quite a lot. I met Hugh there when Hugh had, long ponytail down his back. And we used to go to Bar 88 in Kingston as well, and Paul Jordanis's jam night. So I started doing that. And really, I think that phase when I started going to those kind of nights and, getting much more active in the community of musicians in London, started moving on quite a lot quicker then, which is why I kind of link it back to like my progress was quite slow, I think, to meet people, partly because of my personality. I'm not really like, it's not really in my nature to be like, I must be out every night and talk to him, talk to her, meet everybody, do that. I think if you were a student, you'd have gone to those things naturally as part of your kind of social life of being a student. Whereas I was living with friends from home who weren't musicians.
Mm.
I'd managed to find a bit of work to pay the bills, and I had some gigs. So I kind of stayed there for a little while, which was perhaps to my detriment in terms of like speeding through the gears of getting to where I really ultimately wanted to be.
Hey, you've done it. Yeah, done some amazing stuff. And that was cool. You had that quite cushy job that you could just move around and do what you needed to, but you could still focus on practicing and you didn't have to rush it and force it. Because that's the other thing. I've spoken to people who've moved here from other countries and things like that, and they're exhausted with trying to go to every jam and do all that. And also I think it doesn't feel great when you're not getting gigs from it, and sometimes it isn't leading to stuff. So you did it gently, which is a nice way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was lucky to be in that situation, but I think for people listening, one of the big things for all of us, I think, is there is an element of like, you just have to keep persevering. You have to kind of keep believing in the journey you're on with trying to get there. It's not the kind of career that you build up in a month or 6 months. It takes time to meet those people, to build up the contacts, for doors to open.
Yeah.
So there is an element of it where you just need to keep believing it, and in a little bit of, we call it suffering if you want. You might have to just do some things you don't want to do for a few years whilst you build the music career. That company I worked for, there was kind of a sliding doors moment where the marketing girl was leaving and they asked me if I wanted to take on a full-time job. And I can remember I said to them I'd go away and think about it over the weekend, and obviously came back next week and said, no, I'm going to keep on the path I'm on. But I could have said yes to it, and all the things musicians sort of quietly crave, a steady income and a pension fund and whatever. It was kind of there, and it was an interesting moment that then I think I got put in touch with Jessie Grant from the Gabrielle band. Mac Douglas, an old friend of mine who used to play guitar for her, recommended me, and I knew Jessie a bit from doing some functions with him. And then
how are you keeping inspired now? Because you've gone through that long hustle and you're doing some great gigs and you've been doing it a fair while. Yeah, what's keep giving you that inspiration? Why do you still love bass and keeps you going?
It's funny now because I love kind of bass and the whole kind of community and world a bit more than ever, but with family life and everything else, one of the big challenges for me these days is just finding time to pick up the bass just for the sake of playing the bass.
Yeah.
Most of the time when I'm picking up my instruments, it's for a specific reason. It's to learn material or to prep for a show or a tour or whatever it might be. So I really kind of crave that time where I can just pick that thing up and just noodle and play and experiment. I tend to do that now in hotel rooms and when I'm out on the road, because that's when I have a bit more time. When I am home, my 7-year-old is upstairs right now on his iPad waiting for me to come and entertain him. When I'm home, I'm like, I have to prioritize Caroline and the boys. But really, I mean, it's seeing everybody else, talking to guys like Dana. One of the great things about having done this podcast for a little while now is talking to my contemporaries in the UK music scene and hearing everybody's kind of enthusiasm and passion for it, right from the older guys like Phil Mulford or Trevor Barry to, yourself and Dana and everyone else we've had on.
Yeah.
It's really great. So like, yeah, and that kind of really makes me want to kind of just pick up the bass and make sure I'm not lagging behind too much.
Yeah. I found that I've got 2 children, and having children, it kind of focused me as well. It's like, what am I going to prioritize here? I do still love playing bass. I need to earn money, but also I'm really productive with my practice time now. It's kind of like, you've got to prioritize family life, and that's great. And I want to and enjoy that. But it's like, okay, now I've got the bass. I've got this amount of time. What am I going to nail? To be honest, same as you, most of my practice and playing at home is learning stuff and prepping for the next gig and looking through the diary, right, what have I got to prioritize? But it's lovely when you can just play for fun and enjoy it and play along with something and do all the stuff we used to do when we were teenagers.
A lot of the time when I do practice at home, I'll practice double bass because there's a physical element to that. I'm looking at, I've got slightly torn up hands at the moment from the gig in Greece last week, and then I did 4 sets yesterday in London at a hotel called Peninsula. So I tend to play upright if I'm at home because I need to keep my calluses. I need to keep that hand strength and intonation and all those kinds of things. And the other time that I really do sit down and actually I kind of force myself to be a bit creative and practice is when I know I've got an Overwater demo coming up. I kind of feel like, I have to play something a little bit good if I'm going to demo this really amazing bass.
Those videos have been great, man. I've been loving them. Really cool. Really, really nice to see you do different stuff like the Fretless one and various others.
Yeah.
But we need to talk about all that. Well, just on that, have you done some more that you've got ready to go out? Is there going to be some other demo ones coming up?
There's nothing in the can at the moment. There's a 4-string Progress up there I want to get my hands on. Actually, I think there's a really nice 5-string that we shared recently. I don't know if it's gone out yet. Sometimes it's a race against kind of my schedule and the shipping schedule of like when the bass needs to go to the customer or to the dealer. So we can't get all of them. We've been doing it long enough now that we've got demos of every instrument in the range that we offer. Yeah. But if there's one with a really particularly, lovely top or different electronics or anything, then I like to try and get them in the can so we've got them all on record. So yeah, I'm going to try and get up there soon, but the focus right now, I've got another one of these interviews later this week, which is going to be great. So we're trying to get a new series of these going as well and get some new content coming out for everybody because there's a little bit of a lull for a while after we had our event where I last saw you at Premises in Hackney.
Which was great.
I think I've been working kind of formally with Overwater now for a couple of years. And I mean, talking about, side jobs I did, in my 20s, this is like the dream side hustle. I get to like play and talk about, the best bass guitars in the land. It's just so cool to kind of get up there, and obviously I know the guys and the processes they use so much better now. The more I learn about it, the more time I spend up there. It's one of those industries that feels so important, so precious, and particularly in this day and age, that people are still making these incredible instruments, tools, but works of art, like I can see on the wall behind you there. And I know with those, like I know
gallery here.
Yeah. But I know, like, I look at them now and I kind of, particularly your sparkly one. I know the story of it. I know Martin calling it unicorn juice and swearing a lot because the glitter kept splitting.
You know the love, but also the went into making it.
I think it was the glitter kept splitting from the color when they were doing it. So it took a few attempts.
He's just got me saying, "When's it ready? When can I have my bass?" It's like, you've given us a hard task here, man.
Yeah, but it's so cool. It came out so well, that one. I think that looks amazing, that bass. So it's a real treat. Particularly some of the ones I've done recently. It's a real treat to go and get to just go up there and fool around with stuff like that. And I've not been a content creator, content guy by any stretch of the imagination. So even things like that, like mucking around with cameras and lighting, what's the best time to post it on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, all those things. Like, it's a learning process for me as well. And it's been really fun to be able to dig into that. And it's something that I can do on a train, in an airport, in a hotel room, on a tour bus. Like, it's a really lovely thing for me to be able to kind of tie into the various other bits and bobs that I do to make up my day to day.
And how did you first discover Overwater, and how did this all start with you working with the guys?
So it was through Zoltan Dekany, who taught both of us. Just phenomenal bass player, amazing teacher. So Zoltan got a 6-string, I think it would have been a Perception back then, a fretless 6-string Perception. He has a couple of different J series basses now, a 4-string and a 5. But yeah, so Zoltan had one then, and after I graduated, I got in touch with them, and they started talking about a bass, and they gave me an amazing, a really generous discount. As a young bass player, they were really generous with me and made me this one, which is the bass I play on basically everything. Look at that. It's still like, the finish still looks amazing. Yeah,
it does.
It's got same kind of inlays as yours does on it. So obviously 5-string. It's a 35-inch scale. Has the Overwater East preamp, and so we don't make the bridge like this anymore. We have our own custom-made bridge, and we have our own custom-made pickups and everything now. So this is a little bit different from back in the day. It currently has 2 stripes of gaffer tape on the back, which was a cross. I can't remember why someone had put it on there, but I turned them around because one was bigger than the other, so it kind of reminded me of my 2 boys. So I just kept that on there.
Oh, you little cutie.
Yeah, so it stays on there now. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely got some battle scars on it, but it's just great. And particularly Jesse, the MD for Gabrielle, is a big fan of this bass, so it goes with me everywhere. It's kind of really the only bass I play. With the contemporary J's like yours behind you there, is kind of, I think, more of a reflection of what we want to do with a jazz bass, really. Something that's identifiable as Overwater, something you can recognize immediately. Because there's so many basses that look like this, basically a super jazz, right? So part of the challenge for us is, how can we take that classic kind of aesthetic, but make it immediately identifiable as an Overwater? So mine's going to be along those lines, but without the kind of scratch plate, and so it's all going to be smooth, and we're going to have the wood matched pickup covers over the top of here. So a bit like we did a custom one for Dana Fisher, his white one.
Yeah.
So a similar design to that, but I played that for so long, I kind of feel a little bit wedded to the colors and everything. So it's going to be that kind of blue with a flame maple top and the same inlays, maple fingerboard. So it's really this one.
Yeah.
It's this one, but kind of brought bang up to date for what we do as Overwater now. Because there is an element where, like, I'm talking about the basses all the time, talking about Overwater, and this bass, as much as I love it and will always love it, it will always be precious to me, doesn't actually represent what we do right now. That bass is 20 years old. So that's what we used to do. So the one that's coming through is what we do now in 2026, which I'm really excited to play. I can't wait to get that out. I think I should have it in time for the Boyzlife tour in the autumn.
Nice.
So it'll be really fun. I can immediately put that into kind of heavy rotation, which will be fun.
Great stuff, man. Let's talk a bit about education, because you teach too. So
Mhm.
where can people get in touch with you about that and what you're offering?
I do teach, and I always have taught. I still do some private lessons online from here. To kind of rewind quickly, I moved from London to the Lake District 4 years ago, which is part of how I got in touch, why I'm now in touch with Overwater, because they're only an hour from me up in Carlisle. I live in Windermere in the Southern Lakes, and Carlisle's North Lakes. So I teach remotely from here, and I have a couple of local students as well. But I've always done that because like guys like you and I had that kind of formal education with a place like Leeds Conservatoire and a teacher like Zoltan. I think a lot of the things that we learnt are quite transferable. Zoltan kind of comes from that Jeff Berlin school. So it's a lot of talking about chord tones and really understanding the harmony, understanding the fingerboard and how that can unlock a lot of different possibilities for different styles of music. So I still really enjoy teaching. I love that element of watching students start to kind of, the light bulb moment.
Yeah.
There's an element now where it's a little bit flexible, because sometimes I'll be doing the lesson here. Sometimes it'll be from a dressing room on tour. Sometimes it's from a hotel room. So it's not been something I've been pushing hugely lately, but definitely still something I enjoy doing. And I think the way I've learned and the way I approach the instrument transfers quite well into teaching people, as long as they're happy to learn, to go a little bit deeper than like, I want to learn this bass line to that song, because anyone can teach you that. The internet can teach you that. I think some of the deeper stuff can really make a difference to most students.
Well answered. Going back to the gig side of things, how do you prep for gigs when it's your gig in comparison to when you're depping on something?
Well, with any gig that I'm doing for the first time, for whatever reason, it's in my personality. I don't know I've learned it until I've done the gig and nailed the gig. So whether that be for a theatre show or for a pop artist or just, for a big corporate that's coming up or something, I need to go over it and over it and over it. That was definitely the case with Gabrielle. I remember back in the day, I spent weeks and weeks learning that stuff. And
so you didn't start as a dep, you went straight in on that then?
Well, it was funny with Gab, because she was kind of on a bit of a hiatus. And when she was doing shows, she was doing them with an acoustic lineup of like acoustic guitar, drums, and 2 BVs. So there weren't many full band gigs for the first few years. There was one in Kings Lynn in Norfolk, a big like town square kind of festival. And they put together quite a big band for that. And that was the first time they'd gone out with a band in a long time. Like I said, I knew Mac, the guitarist, but so myself, Isaiah Yard, and Jamie Parker, who were both keyboard players, got pulled in to kind of fill out the band. And we did a couple of days rehearsals at premises, actually, funnily enough, in Hackney, where the bass day was, in that same room. I can remember Gabrielle coming in, and immediately rehearsal stopped for an hour while we all sat down. She bought everybody apple pie and custard, and we all sat down and had apple pie and custard. Yeah. Then we set off, and I can remember the first time we did Outreach, because the top of that song, one of her big hits, is really just bass guitar and her when she sings the first verse, and a real kind of goosebump moment where you hear a song from your childhood being sung by that person. It's been an amazing gig ever since, and I've got a lot of love for all the people involved in that project. We all have known each other for 12, 13 years or so now. And we've had a lot of adventures along the way. Gabrielle did her own arena tour last year, and has just been smashing it. Every year she goes out, the shows get bigger, and everything, the band, everything is really, really gelling and just sounds fantastic. So it's a fun project to be involved with. It's great from a rhythm section point of view. There's some great bass lines, great arrangements from our musical director, Jesse, who's just a phenomenal drummer, a phenomenal musician to work with. The band and everything about it is just very good fun. I feel very, very privileged to be there and to get to play those songs with people. It's good fun.
Yeah, I bet, man. It's awesome. I'm super proud of you. I want to come and see you do it live, because I want to see the videos. It's all those big tunes from back in the day. They still mean so much to everyone. And like, it's super nostalgic for us. But like they're still so well received, and it's incredible what she's doing and what you guys are
Yeah,
doing.
it's fantastic. So to come back to your question properly, I mean, the main thing, and this has been a common theme with all of these interviews that we've done, certainly, you know, with yourself, but with everybody really, is the thing you cannot slack on is preparation. You have to know it inside out. So if you had to just play that song with just a bass guitar and a click track, you could do it. You know where all the sections are. You know the arrangement. You don't need a cue from a singer or whatever it might be. You know it
When
inside
you're
and out.
learning it, are you writing out little cheat charts for yourself? Are you transcribing stuff like fully, or are you trying to have just a few notes that you can get down to a set list?
You know what I tend to do? I did this with the Boyzlife gig last year when I had to learn it properly for the first time. Is I learn all the songs and then I play through them again, but I listen to the reference recording in my headphones and I play the bass, so I can't hear my own bass, but I'm playing along. And then you'll hear if there's something going on the record that you're not playing. And
That's
then
the nice way of doing it. You don't just play over it. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you can hear yourself as well, you'll block out some of those little details. So once I've learnt it and I think I know it, then I'll play it again, but not being able to hear myself, still listening to the original bass player. And then then you can hear little things that you might have missed, and then you can make, you know, the kind of creative choice as to whether you want to add that in or whether you want to do your own thing. I think most of the time, you know, things like fills and stuff, it doesn't have to be as it is. If it's an important thing, if it's the bass fill at the start of spinning around, the Kylie Minogue thing, the bidi-boom, 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 then obviously you're going to have to play that, right? That's important. That's part of the song. But some fills are not. Some fills are just fills, and you can put your own stamp on it. And especially as you grow with a gig, like we have done with Gab over the years. When we go out with Boyzlife in the autumn, I'm sure we'll all add little touches we didn't do in the spring. So you learn where the space is and where you can stretch a little bit and add ideas in. So when I'm learning something for the first time, it's all a lot of hours and a lot of time, a lot of attention to detail. Now, if I'm going to prep for, like when we go out with Gabrielle next year, when we're prepping for the tour, I'll have a couple of new tunes to learn and maybe a couple of different arrangements, a new intro, or Jesse's going to change something here or there. But most of the set will be stuff I'd know, right? So my prep now for that kind of thing is just listening to it and listening to what I've been doing. Have I actually gone a little bit too far? Am I playing too much now because I'm comfortable? Am I overdoing it now? Could I actually simplify this and make it serve the song a little bit better? And then it's almost like there's an element of kind of mindfulness about what I try and do when I approach a gig like that. Or the same with the musical theatre thing. If you're doing it day in, day out, you know a certain tune inside out, you know it's perfectly. But if you do that tune with a metronome on a ridiculously slow tempo, like, can you play that whole bass line at half the tempo of the track just with you and a click? And can you do that, you know, all the kind of things we know to do with clicks where you can put it just on the 2 and the 4, or you could just put it on the 1 or on the 4. And I do metronome games like that with myself. Like If You Ever has a kind of quite a particular kind of feel for us when we do that show. So I could slow that thing right down. And so I'm getting it super accurate. So you're really feeling all those subdivisions. And then when you practiced it like that and got it really comfortable at that tempo, when you put it back at the original tempo, it's like you can see the matrix. You have such a deeper understanding of the pocket and the groove.
Yeah.
So I try and do those kinds of things. If I'm prepping for a gig, I already know, and I have time. I'm not pretending that I do this every single time I go, and, you know, when I do a Gabrielle festival next weekend, I will not be finding time to slow everything down to half the tempo. Yeah. I'm just going to go and smash it. It'll be fine. But when there is time to do that, I think those kinds of internal clock kind of timing exercises really pay dividends, because most of the time when you're playing any kind of pop music, the technical aspect of it isn't going to be particularly challenging for you if you've already done your time getting your stuff together. So a lot of how people perceive you as a bass player is going to come down to sound and feel, which are those kind of, they're quite difficult for people to quantify, I think, sometimes. But there are things you can do to control it. you can get yourself an Overwater bass. That'll take care of your sound.
Yeah.
Care about your tone, care about the equipment you're using. Consider investing in a custom instrument that works perfectly for you, the way you play, the way you want to be heard. And then the timing thing is really, like that's what people get excited about with bass players so often. It's a feel thing, it's a groove thing. But you can intellectualize that to a certain degree. You can do things to improve it. It's not just a case of where you were brought up or who you listened to when you were 10. There are exercises you can do to improve it. So I would encourage anybody to spend a bit of time doing those kinds of exercises with metronomes, as well as, digging into all their favorite groove players, whoever you listen to, Pino Palladino, Matt Ramsey, whatever. Spend time with your favorite players, but try and do something kind of quite measurable. Like recording yourself is one of the other things that people always talk about, isn't it? You can record yourself into Logic now, and you can see, even if you were just playing crotchets, you can see how you line up with that click in the wave file. So you can see it in a graph in front of you, whether you're accurate every single time or whether you tend to rush or drag or wiggle both ways, because there's always a bit of wiggle room.
Yeah. No, well said, man. That's some really important, good points then. Just come back to the fills thing that you mentioned about, obviously there's a certain iconic fill, you've got to nail that. But when you've been doing a gig a long time like Gabrielle, and then for me, my version, because I do lots of music theatre stuff, is when you're on it a lot, however many people in the band are listening to you play it so many times. And it's quite nice to kind of go, you know what, I'm going to mix it up a bit here, always within tastefully and always within the right context. But I kind of live for that stuff after a while, because like I'm concentrating on the groove, I'm concentrating on the feel, sitting with the drummer, all the important stuff. But I'm also kind of thinking, oh, they've heard me do that one quite a lot there. What am I going to do to make that a bit more interesting for them and me? And then if you want something a really long time, there's a few shows I've done hundreds of times. So you kind of like, I want to keep this fresh, and also pushing yourself as well. I want to keep pushing myself. What else can I do with this? I don't want to get too comfortable on it.
Yeah.
Have you explored some of that with Gabrielle, or are you kind of like, well, I'm going to throw this in tonight?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. And like, we all have some fun with that. But like, I mean, particularly like Jesse and I have known each other a long time, and the way I think we work well together, partly because we both have a similar kind of mindset in terms of there's certain bits in the show where I already know exactly what drum fill Jesse's going to play. We know how each other play the show, and
that's even better, because you can link it up perfectly. That feels great.
Yeah, so it's great fun from that point of view. But then like sometimes Jesse will just want to play his drum. Sometimes I'll just want to throw something else in. And part of the fun is that I know that he's going to clock it immediately. It's important to keep things fresh. And I have a bit of a kind of a mindset where if I do a fill and it's kind of the perfect thing, then I don't really want to change it too much. I think I try and over the years, very consciously think about what's the perfect part, what's the perfect fill, the perfect line to play. And so like, I don't want to change it just for the sake of changing it. If everybody does that in a band, you can end up down quite a messy road.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might not even be one thing per show. It might be one thing per week. And I might do it and then I might throw it away. If I do it and I really like it, it might make it in. And now this is the way I play the show. So then when I prep for the tour next year, I might listen back to recordings from this year or from rehearsals and go, maybe I've gone a little bit too far now.
Yeah.
I think it's a natural thing where you add more than you subtract a lot of the time. I think there is an element of kind of editing that might need to happen from time to time. And because otherwise, if everybody's adding even, a new fill a month over 10 years, it starts getting quite busy.
Have you ever had something go wrong or turned up and the gig wasn't what you expected? Have you got a war story for us?
Oh, mate, you've done your homework. I like it. We sort of did like a pre-launch of the Under My Skin album with Gabrielle, where like warm-up shows, which is funny, like not many people seem to do that anymore. But so we did like a club tour before we went out and did the big theatres. So we were playing King Tut's Wah Wah Hut in Glasgow, which is a really legendary venue in Glasgow. I remember like reading in the Melody Maker and the NME about, Oasis at King Tut's and Alan McGee and all these legendary stuff. I remember actually boring all the Gabrielle lot on the bus on the way up there with, rock and roll tales of King Tut's Wah Wah Hut. A little bit of a schoolboy error on my part. I had my Boss U2, the classic Boss tuner pedal, just in line from my bass into the tuner, out of the tuner to the amp, and then the DI was coming out the DI on the amp, I think, or I think I had a radial Firefly at the time that might have been linked, but the tuner was in line before there, and the tuner decided to crap out right at the start of Out of Reach, which, as I just said, is just me and her, and then the bass just starts going, bleh, bleh, bleh.
Man.
Our tech ran on and was like fiddling, so like it was probably only like 10-15 seconds before he yanked the tuner out and just plugged the bass direct into the DI. There was a pretty horrific couple of seconds there, and it's that thing then of like, I was mortified, but you have to kind of keep your head in the game, or get your head back in the game and play the rest of the show like that hasn't just happened, and you didn't want the world to swallow you up. But
it's so hard to get out of that headspace, isn't it? You're like, oh, it's happened now. It's sorted. We're going again. Just try and... But you're just in a bit of a grump, aren't you? It's like, oh, God.
Yeah. Well, I remember being in a big grump after the show, and I've been so excited about doing King Tut's, and it's funny now because I think my abiding memory of playing King Tut's is that tuner pedal crapping out on me.
Finally, a question that we ask everyone. He knows this. The Mount Rushmore bass players. Who are your top 4 who are still keeping you inspired today?
This is an interesting one because I've heard everybody else's over the years, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I love that one. Yeah, that's so good."
Yeah, too many good ones to pick, and I listed about 7.
Yeah, you did actually. I remember that.
I couldn't bring it down.
Well, we don't live in America. I don't know how big Mount Rushmore is. It's fine. Well, so there was a thing that happened to me which shows my age a little bit, but when I was living in Devon, Bassist magazine did a special episode of the 100 greatest bass albums ever. And I got this and went through with a pen and like ticked off the ones I wanted to go out and get. And so I went to Exeter Library, found the ones I could find in the library, which was a surprising amount. It's a pretty good selection in Exeter Library back in the day of like weird, like very quite niche bass player CDs. So I got Marcus Miller, The Sun Don't Lie, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, the Jacko album, the original Jacko album, and Rage Against the Machine.
Nice. What a mix to get you going.
Yeah. So
good.
So those 4 albums were, they kind of like got me started, and particularly the Marcus one. I'd never heard bass be played like that before. Some of it was a bit above my head, particularly actually, more of the Jacko stuff was kind of a little bit, perhaps kind of beyond me at that point. Bar the obvious stuff like Continuum and Portrait of Tracy and those things, which is just so melodic. But I really got immediately into that. So I copied all those CDs to tape. So then I could drive around in my mum's Renault 5 around the Devon lanes. And my mates or my girlfriend at the time all were forced to listen to like very 80s slap bass wherever we went, basically. So
I still make sure I listen to that.
Yeah. But do you remember there's that one on there, I think it's called Rush Over, with Michelle Endegacello, and it's all like she's like speaking like sweet nothings into him, and Marcus is like slapping the bass. It's all like...
So good.
That one's the one for a boy in Devon. That was it, man. So Marcus is definitely there. So the funny thing is, like, I think with this question, I think about it in terms of like, there's players I love, and then I think about the players that really have had a direct impact on the way I play the bass. So Marcus is that, Flea is that, and then there's the two other people who really have changed the way I play the bass guitar are Zoltan Dekany, because he taught me, and Joey Grant, who did the Gabrielle gig before me. So I learned all the recordings from Joey doing it, and it's still, a bit of a running joke to this day that I'd said like everything good I play on the Gabrielle gig, I basically stole from Joey. Rest in peace. Joey left us a few years ago, but Joey Grant had a huge impact on the way I play and the way I approach that gig, which kind of is such a part of my in my life these days. So yeah, Joey, Zoltan, Marcus, and Flea. Obviously, Jacko had a huge effect on me. John Pattucci, all those guys that played, lines like that. Really, that was kind of the way I was playing then. And I kind of very deliberately didn't play upright when I was at Leeds because I wanted to be a virtuoso on electric and play all of that stuff that I was learning, all the soloing and all the melodies and all, the jazz material we got into at Leeds.
Yeah.
I wanted to do it on electric. And a few years later, I got sick of saying no to gigs, so I started playing upright as well.
Yeah.
That is one thing I would say to bass players, like get yourself a double bass, get yourself some synth bass kind of chops together, because it really does. There's no point painting yourself into a corner where you say no to stuff. If you go and do the study and you understand enough about harmony and everything else to be able to convincingly go and play a standards gig, then it just makes sense that you would also have a double bass and you play that kind of material on double bass, because that's what people want to hear it on. People aren't really going to ask you to play a standards gig on electric bass. It will happen from time to time, and it's fun because you suddenly go, I've got all these options. I can do all these things that I can't do on the upright. But yeah, learn upright, learn synth bass, get all those kinds of things together, and make yourself as employable, as flexible as possible. I think, again, like one of the things we've talked about in these interviews is advice to your younger self. And I would be building that kind of rounded skill set right from the beginning. If I was talking to the younger me and helping him speed up his progression through this industry, it would be those things, like show people right from day one that you play electric upright, you can read, you can play keys bass, you can do these.
I did start playing upright when I was at Leeds, but I was older. I was about 19, 20, and then the synth bass thing a couple of years after that. But yeah, it's super important, isn't it? I'm really glad I've made an effort to do it, because you can just say yes to so much more.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
How does it feel being? Well, how many of these interviews have you done, do you think?
I think this is probably, we're getting towards sort of 20 odd, I would think now. We've had a little hiatus this year. So this is like, I feel like this is like the start of series 2 in my head.
Right. How does it feel being on the other side?
It's funny. Like, yeah, it's interesting to kind of like expand on a lot of the things that I'm kind of thinking as people are talking to me. But
yeah,
I think one of the things you really realize is that the people who are out there making a living and doing great things in the industry, they have a very similar mindset. A lot of it is very simple, obvious things about preparation and professionalism and just a passion for what we get to do, realizing that sometimes it is a bit more all-encompassing than other ways of life and a bit more challenging, but we all get to do something we really love doing, and it's a real privilege to be able to do it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for taking the time. I think
my pleasure. Where can people find you? What's your Insta?
You can find me on danezard.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Dan Ezard. So it's pretty straightforward. There aren't too many Dan Ezards. You'll find me. Obviously, you can find us through the Overwater Basses page. Yeah, and please do get in touch and keep an eye out. We've got newsletters going out every Friday. So subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the Overwater YouTube channel, Instagram, all that stuff. Make sure you subscribe, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be some special offers coming up later in the year, which will definitely start off for subscribers only.
Awesome stuff. Great to see you. See you soon.